Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation and respect, the InkGuild acknowledges that we live, work, and play on the traditional Treaty 7 territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda and Tsuut'ina nations. This territory is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. Finally, we acknowledge all Indigenous and non-Indigenous to honor and celebrate this territory alongside us. Everybody is good to go then?
Stop it.
Gabe,
Yeah, good to go.
how long have you been trying to make this fucking Coleman Trevor thing work? Like, it just popped up one night on the Holy Chat, and I was confused. I was like, because I was like justifying, like, oh, they're probably talking about Star Wars, but then it's like every single time at 1 or 2 in the morning, or between like 12 to 2 in the morning, you would post fucking Coleman Trevor.
Well, I thought we were just listing characters Rowan Atkinson has played.
Wait, did he actually fucking play? No.
No.
Okay.
No, what?
Gabe, you've made Coleman Trevor the cryptid of the InkGuild chat, and now I would like to pass it off to Alex to start this episode.
There's so much InkGuild lore. First we have Guu-chan as our mascot, and now Coleman Trevor as our cryptid.
Anyways, everyone good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gabe?
Yeah, good.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey there.
Bonjour.
My name is Dean, and welcome back to the InkGuild Podcast. Just go to fucking therapy.
Don't correct me. I don't care.
Need to start a revolution.
I'm going to fucking explode if I don't say this by now.
She would challenge them to a double dutch.
I'm going to summon up his spirit to fix all of this up for
You
me.
didn't have good enough tea and or comic books, so...
And you know what? I'm gonna say it.
All of them are fucking idiots.
Simply everyone is taking cocaine.
Just say your morning routine.
You're replicant breathing.
I'm so excited to find out if Jughead got abducted by aliens or not.
Boneless.
Is your refrigerator running? Better go get it then.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the InkGuild Podcast. I am your host for tonight, Alex, and we have a fun episode for tonight. With me, I have Dean.
Hello.
Gabe.
Hello.
Brooke.
Hi.
And Tyler.
Hello.
Tonight we are doing our favorite OCs, part 2. And yeah, we're just going to be talking about our own characters, because that's always really fun.
Vanity is my favorite sin.
I don't think we have anything to plug at the beginning of the episode, so...
I mean, like, there is always, like, you know, our first part, so... For those who aren't familiar with this, since this is Favorite Characters Part 2, you're welcome to check out Part 1, where Alex, Gabe, and I, like, spoke about, like, we had our own characters at that point. Or we spoke about, like, our original characters for the first time, and that was back in, like, Season 1, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, holy shit. One of my favorite characters as part of the series, but not this first book yet, is a character called Britt Omaya.
His name is Henrik Bloodstorm, and he's also sometimes known as the Naked Knight.
I doubly love it now.
His whole thing is that he's this huge, incredibly buff macho man who wears this giant suit of armor to get into battle, but if he's pressed, if he's strained, if he's fighting a particularly cunning opponent, he will take every piece of his armor off in order to become a much faster opponent.
I think I want to talk about a character. His full name is Asimilin Vilras Macveltin, or Asin for short. Gotta love made-up names that make everything complicated.
I'm not on speaker, but I'm pretty sure something just summoned right out of my, right into my room.
So yeah, if you're curious about more of our OCs, feel free to check out that episode on our YouTube channel.
And on Spotify.
Nice.
I mean, isn't this whole episode kind of just a plug for ourselves anyways? So like...
This whole brand is a plug for ourselves.
True.
This whole property is just being like, hey, publishers, we're definitely not shit-talking you and some of the people you've signed, so sign us too.
Oh, please, we all know I'm all shit talk.
Yes, we do know that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we're just gonna take turns talking about some of our original characters, why we like them, why they're our favorites. And yeah, I think we'll just jump right into it. I suppose I said I was going first, so I will start. So the first character that I am going to talk about tonight is from one of my many orcs in progress. Specifically, this one is currently being referred to as Horse Keepers. One of my oldest projects, actually, and the character I'm talking about is named Mars Silva. He is sort of the protagonist. It's a very large cast story, so it's hard to say that. But he is tentatively the protagonist of this story. And he's a character that kind of started off with like not a lot to him. But I slowly started like working on him and developing him more and more until he quickly became one of my favorites in the cast and usurped the previous character who was intended to be the protagonist. So that's fun. In the world that he is from, he is a prince, an elven prince. And the world that he lives in, everyone has like everyone with magic has like unique personal magic to each of them. And Mars is a particularly fun character because his personal magic is kind of the opposite of that, in that he is basically anti-magic. Magic doesn't work on him at all, which I thought is something that makes him very unique in this world. And it puts him in like a position where people have to get very creative if they want to like do things with him. That sounds really weird when I put it like that. But you know, if someone's trying to murder him, for example, they can't use magic to do it. But also because magic is so normal in this world, a lot of things are like magic is used for a lot of things without like really thinking about it. So for example, Mars's best friend Athena is an illusionist, and so often when she's like explaining stuff, she will make illusions with her hands to kind of like demonstrate what she's trying to say. Mars can't see them at all, so it kind of like makes things very difficult for him. And I just think that like that struggle that he has in the world makes him like really interesting, and it's always fun trying to figure out how to make the plot work with this, I guess, like lack of ability that he has. Personality wise, he tends to be very like, well, he's a prince and it kind of reflects it. He can be very charming, very charismatic, but he's also an excellent warrior, and he's actually the second prince in his family, with his older brother being the heir to the throne. And so he was put in a position of being like his brother's protector almost. And so he's very serious sometimes. Like he knows how to be charming, but he also knows when it's time to turn that off and take things seriously. And he's an excellent strategist. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about him.
He sounds cool as hell.
He's
all
very
right, so
Mm-hmm.
anti-magic. Are they just gonna stab him? Is one of the plots he's just going to get his ass stabbed? Because you have to find different ways of dealing with an anti-magic field, right? Is he going to get stabbed?
He gets stabbed a lot of times. Yeah, there's a lot of sword fights in this series.
Okay, because that's like the moment you said anti-magic, that was where my brain went. I was like, man, better be a real good swordsman then.
He sure is. He's actually the head knight of the kingdom that he lives in. So he's very well trained fighter.
I do have a question about how magic works against an anti-magic user. Because, like, there's been an anti-force user here and there in Star Wars lore and stuff like that. If you've got, and I want to hear your author's opinion on this, if you've got someone whose magical power is telekinesis, let's say, and they pick up a rock and throw it at him, that's still a physical attack, right? He'd still have to dodge.
Yes.
Okay. Because I've definitely read a story where that person just wasn't allowed to pick up the rock because it would hurt the anti-magic user, and I thought that was extremely contrived. So I'm very glad that.
This is something I've thought about. One of the other characters in the story who's important, his like special magic is I call it true aim. Basically, he like chooses a target, and whatever he aims at it will hit that target. And so one of the things I had to think about was, does his magic apply to the target, or does it apply to the ammunition or whatever it is that he's throwing or shooting? Because that will change how it affects Mars in the story. So if it affects, like, if he's trying to shoot Mars, if it affects the arrow, then the arrow can still hit Mars. But if it affects the target, then it wouldn't hit him because he can't be chosen as a target. So this was something that I thought about very specifically because I knew it would probably come up multiple times throughout this story. So he himself can't be affected by magic, but he can be affected by things that can be affected by magic.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Question for you. Like you said that this character was like one of your oldest characters. You said that they were you created this character around like when you were what, like 7, right?
Not this character, this story. I think he came into existence like a lot later. Like I would have been 12 or 13. It was the character that he usurped as protagonist I created when I was 7.
Oh, okay. So like my question then is just, how has it been like trying to, like, after knowing that this character is part of a very like old franchise for you, basically, like, what's it been like trying to make this like Mars like the central protagonist, and how is that, like, why the decision to make him the central protagonist? Because you said that like he usurped the former one.
Yeah, so the former protagonist of this story is actually his niece, Luna. And I'd originally chosen her to be the protagonist because she was like the oldest, and the story in my head at the time revolved around her. And to an extent it still does revolve around her. But I just found like my plans for Mars and where he goes and who he interacts with throughout the story, and especially his relationship with his older brother, put him in like a position where it made more sense for him to be the protagonist. Like he, basically, like the plot of the story is his older brother, who has been crowned king, goes missing, and he's kind of like in charge of the kingdom while his brother is away. And so he just ended up being very much in like a position where he was making all of the decisions about what should be done. So it just made sense for him to take over as the protagonist because of that. Like I felt like he was the character who was in a position to be active enough to be the protagonist, whereas Luna, I still need to figure out what I'm doing with her, but like as of right now, most of her story, she just kind of hangs out in one spot and lets stuff happen to her, and I didn't want her to be the protagonist, but I couldn't find a way to like make her more active, I guess.
Terribly sorry, but when you say she hangs out in one spot, I just imagine her Blair Witching in a corner. That's all I pictured.
Let me rephrase that.
Not a question, but I do love all your names, by the way. You know I love mythic names. The names are on point.
Yeah, all my elves are named after gods. It's not subtle.
Yeah, like I wanted to ask because it's always interesting seeing just like for me when a story that I know of has been existing for a long time, like especially for my current one, Xeno, that's been existing since 2016, and for yours, like a lot of your stories, dude, are like hella longer. So it's like, how is it that decisions change and like why this character and why all these things? I just wanted to ask.
Well, this might surprise you guys, but when I was 7, I didn't know how to write very well.
Fake news.
That's fake. We've read Crystal and Kayla. That was amazing.
That's even younger too. So, but no, it's just part of it is like these characters are tied to one of my collections that I have. I was a hell of a collector as a kid. I still would like to, but you know, the world right now isn't exactly ideal for that. But I have this like massive collection of model horses that I've been collecting since I was 7. And so most of the characters in this story are tied to those horses. And I remember what I would do was every time I would get a new one, I would pull out all of my horses and I would go through my story that I had for them again, and try to find a way to add in this new character and figure out where they belonged, and that kind of stuff. So Mars came in at the same time as 2 other characters, Tempo, who is his love interest, and then Requiem, who is Tempo's niece. And honestly, all 3 of them, like as soon as I got them and I started trying to figure out like what their dynamic was, all 3 of them quickly became like my favorites in the cast. And so it wasn't difficult for me to start. It was like I came up with these characters and then I started focusing on them more than I focused on like the rest of the characters. So it just at some point I had all these ideas for these 3 characters that it just like they became more and more important to the story until Mars became like arguably the most important to the story. So it was just like following where my brain took me when I introduced more characters, basically, and then trying to fit the rest of it all together.
Nice.
Did I answer the question? I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, you were just breaking down like, you know, how like thought processes and decisions change because, you know, as writers, like we already kind of do that. So
yeah, it's like sometimes you come up with a new idea and you gotta see where it takes you, and sometimes it takes you to really great places.
Yeah, and I mean even with like older ideas too, right? Like there are just some ideas or characters or like places that you just can't let go, right?
Yeah.
Might I say, also very interesting using that physical medium of that collection of yours to tell this story and connect the characters to. I've never thought of doing something like that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, the story has changed a lot since I was 7, if you couldn't guess. I think the original one was like I had the good couple and the evil couple, and the evil couple tried to steal the good couple's babies.
Very, very Christian and Henderson fairy tale. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's gone an over. What am I trying to say? It's gone under a lot of construction since then. But yeah, that's Mars. So I think we can move on to Dean, unless there's any further questions y'all have for me.
None for me.
So Dean, tell us about your character.
Cool. Okay. So, I actually already talked about this character in our favorite character, or in our favorite OC's part 1 episode. It is Linnea, goddess of the soil, and she has been like, I'll quickly restate like how I I'll quickly like restate how I felt about that character as much as I can. Like, she is a very interesting character, is essentially like a mother figure to Porter at times, and as the story progresses, like it's meant to, or thing, like I'm wanting to have Linnea embrace that that role because of the events surrounding the story. And I think what I failed to kind of acknowledge at the time, because I didn't properly go into it at the time of me talking about that, or talking about Linnea at the time, was the moral implication of where she is at, or where she is at in the story. So for some context, without spoiling too much, Linnea is introduced fairly early into the story and becomes a key figure, and becomes a physical and mental presence for Porter. And throughout Porter's journey, it is wanting to be like better than herself, because and I say that because Linnea as a god in my story is the only one out of the 9 that has been apostatized. How do I it's her religion and worship of her has been completely outlawed, basically. And for events that I may not have spoken of during the original story, but and for like continuity's sake, because I might change it at some point, like it's because she feels as though she's in a very interesting place, not just as a deity, but as a person, because the gods in my world, they were once people. And trying to figure out like where her place was in the world and how influential she can really be, and if her apostasy was meaningful or meaningless, let's say. I didn't talk about that in thing. I may have talked about it in the first part, but I certainly didn't have like the confidence to speak on it then in full detail, because I didn't really consider it back then. I knew that Linnea's apostasy was influential to like her story, but I didn't really like consider the implication of just how influential that is, because it's a god being like completely shunned and turned away by almost an entire like continent's worth of people, potentially like hundreds if not millions more people. And it's because of that then that I was always wondering, like, that's really interesting for me as a storyteller to kind of go into that, because it establishes like a whole country, like a whole continent's like single agreement that this god is the fucking worst, while at the same time trying to see if like Linnea believes in that and is doing her best to not think it. Like, the way that I can say this is just, do you believe the shit that you hear from people, or do you try to be better from it? And I say that I didn't have the confidence or the knowledge back then, because I've only now recently started to develop it. Like, I've only recently started to dive more into like the fact that like all of Illyria fucking hates her so much, to the point where, and this isn't a major spoiler, but like when her temple is first introduced and Porter and Magna find their way there, they a lot of the worshippers are found like mutilated and like killed in awful ways. So like the influence of one person a god especially killed all these people who were just trying to uplift, like who were just trying to, like, you know, worship her in peace after the events that caused her to be like rejected and outlawed, and her worship outlawed in the first place. And I think that, like, exploring that now after kind of embracing it really is really fun. It's really fun to kind of go into like how this doesn't just affect like Porter and Magna and the rest of the narrative, but it allows for so much interesting conversation between like countries of how a god who has been outlawed for centuries is just now back, seemingly. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean for the person who what does that mean for the people who are associated with them? Like, how is it that the people who are associated with her, how are they treating it? So, yeah.
So I've got a question.
Yes.
Because I've read everything you've posted thus far. Still don't know why Linnea was apostatized. I digress. If you're saving that for story reasons, c'est la vie. Don't fucking tell me. However, I have an interesting question, because you've spoken a lot about the people and how it affects the people, but there are more gods in your pantheon. Is Linnea apostatized by the people or by the other gods as well? Because one of those things has a bit more of a power level to it than the other.
Certainly the people. As for the rest of the gods, I would have to think, well, like the event in which it happened, which, you know, obviously I can't speak on it yet, just it ruined a god's reputation, and not even a reputation, just the distrust that all of Illyria has now for Linnea still is massive. And I think if I were to write in the like Linnea's own like deities, like her fellow deities, like mistrusting her and like not seeing her as some kind of ally anymore, then that is really interesting, because it's so much weight on her shoulders, and that would really be fun to play with.
And just while we're on this particular note, because this is something I'm kind of dealing with in the mythic cosmos, is the idea of something that lives for a very long time being ostracized. And you've talked about the mothership aspect of Linnea, and I do see that a lot in her interactions with Porter. You've nailed that bit. But there's one thing that I think you could definitely touch on, and let me know if you're going to, is like the way the other gods mistrust her, the way humanity and the races dislike her. Wouldn't you be really alone for like 300 years? I realize you live forever, but 300 years of no one talking to you, giving you the cold shoulder, kind of gotta suck, nah?
Yeah. And I think upon like progressing the plot, and I'm really going to try to, like in my draft right now, I'm really going to try to push the plot rather than just continuously try and make the edits. I think that's what I'll focus on. Like, how is it that so much time in isolation and the mistrust and the, what is it? Basically just like the hatred that an entire continent and civilization's worth of people have for you for centuries, that it is enough to, like, you have to sit through and watch like your own followers like butchered. That's brutal. That can't sit well with any deity, let alone a single person let alone a deity who used to like be among these people.
I'm going to say one last comment. I know I'm taking up a lot of your question time, and it's not a question. I just want to say, with no politics or religion involved, congratulations, Dean. You've created Satan.
Oh my fuck! Oh shit!
Kinda not lying, but yeah, just hey.
Oh my god!
I have a question.
What's up?
How does this affect Porter's relationship with her? Like, is Porter kind of like, all these stories about her? Like, does she hesitate to trust her at first?
That's interesting because, like, there certainly is an interesting, like, interesting as in Porter and Magna grew up idolizing, like, the gods through the Mist comics, which Tyler's familiar with, but it's basically my way of like lore dumping, and through these fictionalized representations of these gods and like their various like incarnations throughout history, like there is, it's kind of like being, what's the term for being, like when you see someone famous, starstruck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's certainly that maybe in the beginning, but knowing that just that Linnea is supposed to be an influential figure in Porter's quest, there certainly is a bit of pushback because yeah, Porter has to acknowledge that this is a goddess who has been apostatized. Like, no one thing, like, she acknowledges the consequences of it, but she doesn't ever really think truly just about like, holy shit, I'm working with a like deity who is presumed good, but has done thing, but has caused something so horrific that the rest of my people hate her. So that's a really interesting relationship, actually, and I'll elaborate it more on the more in the book because that is really interesting. Yeah, I don't think I like outright missed it, but like now that you've pointed that out, yeah, it would affect Porter a lot more than just realizing like, yeah, all my family is gonna die, but or like all my family could die if the country finds out. But at the same time, like that's just acknowledging the consequences, like the obvious consequence. It's not really putting into perspective just how dangerous this is. So that's a good point.
My other question then, because I didn't know about these comics, is there this is like not related to Linnea that much specifically, but just like the gods in general. If you have these like comics that talk about the gods, then surely they're not like perfectly accurate, because I feel like that would be very difficult to do. Is there like they're like expecting Linnea to act one way because that's how she is in the comics, but then she like doesn't do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, because of the thing, yeah, you're right. Like in comics, it's a fictionalized form of media. They may be based on like, you know, real life events in the canon, but ultimately as fictional representation, they're bound to be like, you know, subjective, right? There's maybe like ways of portraying not just Linnea, who actually isn't featured in the comics because of the apostasy, but like for her fellow deities, there is like an air of like idealization and romanticism about the gods that maybe it seems like the entire country has, like the entire continent has seemed to have forgotten that these were once people. They were once thing. Like,
even
go ahead.
So I'm just saying, even with that, I feel like having your characters like have this idea of what the gods are like in their mind because of like what they were taught or what they read in these comics, and then actually meeting the gods and having those expectations kind of shattered a little. But I think that'd be something really fun to explore, and kind of like having to realize that it's not like the comics. Real life isn't like the comics.
Of course, yeah. Like it's, yeah, like meeting your idol is a really interesting like subplot to play on, because it's a god. Like, never meet your heroes, never meet God.
Never meet God.
Never meet your gods. Greek mythology tells us this every time. Do not meet the gods.
Yeah.
True, very true.
Yeah. So like when exploring that, yeah, just Linnea she wants to be benevolence, but like a long unfortunate stem of being portrayed as and being associated with only malevolence and like hatred. Holy shit, I did just create Satan.
I'm telling you, there's a reason I liked the character.
Holy shit!
It was Mommy Satan, and little Porter there is our little Satanist. Anyways, continue.
We love it. No, it seems like you have a lot of really interesting stuff to explore with like those relationships in this world.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's why I asked you that one question that I asked you, Alex, because like I had that idea when I didn't even realize I had the idea when we first did the first original characters thing, and I talked about Linnea because like she, like, after just becoming more exposed to different media and like having more of a presence in my writing again, just it's so fascinating just what was there for me and what I can now add to it. Like, it doesn't even really change the story too much because all of the implications for that are there in the story. Like a person, like man meeting God, falling from grace, all of that is implied. Not directly. I didn't fucking know until just recently, but
that's the beauty.
Yeah. The potential is there. So that's all for me.
Great. Gabe.
All right. Right on. The first character that I'm going to talk about on today's episode is a character in a book that I've the book that I've been teasing for a good long while now, and I'm still not finished. I'm so sorry. Called Lemonheart. So the character I'm going to talk about is Dune, who is the main character of Lemonheart. For anyone listening or anyone on the call right now who I haven't talked about this to, I don't think that's any of you, but for anyone listening who does not know what Lemonheart is, but essentially the premise of Lemonheart is that this kid Dune, he's a guy, and he lives in a post-apocalyptic bad place, a wasteland,
spin-off of the Good Place TV show.
As opposed to the Apocalypse Good Place. I want to see the Apocalypse Good Place. Continue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm getting there. Oh, no. Believe you me, I'm good and goddamn getting there. But for now, I was talking about Dune. Because the premise of Lemonheart is that Dune is a teenage boy who lives in what is essentially a village of cannibals who live in an area of the wasteland called the North, which is all ice and death, occasionally polar bears, mostly cannibals. And Dune's primary method of coping with his bad surroundings is his raging porn addiction. However, one day, a group of unknown, to him at least, military guys, they come to the village, they kill everyone because they're cannibals. Adoy. And they steal all his porn, which sets Dune on a vengeance quest to get his porn back. So this is the guy I'm talking about. This is the Dune. Dune is the boy. Essentially, Lemonheart is the story of how this teenager goes on a mad quest to get his porn back, becomes a left-wing domestic terrorist, the usual stuff, as one does.
We love that for him. We love that.
Mm-hmm.
Dune has been he's a lot of fun for me to write because I think I was saying this before the podcast got started, but the reason that in the previous OCs episode I didn't talk a lot about my actual main characters and I talked about side characters was in all those stories. So I talked about Glass Inferno, I talked about Skybuster, and I talked about Folklore. And in all three of those stories, the main characters, respectively Naomi, Sky, and Artemis, they're all like fairly normal people. Like they have their quirks and they have stuff about them that is interesting to talk about. But it's nothing that would I think would jump out at you quite the same way as violent, mad, compulsive masturbator on a vengeance quest. And that's basically what that's basically what Dune is as a protagonist. He just exists to be jarring. That is sort of his. The story of Lemonheart is almost like a very. It starts off and it's a very like from the outset, it's a very kind of normal post-apocalyptic story of just a power struggle between wasteland folk and more advanced military types. But then, sort of just jamming his way into this story. I haven't done this episode yet, but I wrote basically the script for a 70 panel long PowerPoint presentation on this story's lore, and it's all to get to the point that Dune is a madman, like who's basically disrupting a 300-year power struggle in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. So
active protagonist.
He's a very active protagonist. He's kind of he's like a disruptively active protagonist. Which is what I like about him. I love writing this character who has he has a very fun combination of like manic, chaotic energy and like ignorance, and not like ignorance in like a bigoted way. Like he's immature. He's extremely immature, and he's from this place in the north that is disconnected even from like the rest of the wasteland. So he just knows basically nothing about anything. And he interjects like a kind of madness into the story where he reacts to other characters' self-seriousness about their own struggles and their own ideologies and their own like motivations as if he has like no fucking clue what they're talking about, because he genuinely doesn't. Like there will be tons of scenes where characters will be characters with like these very tragic backstories and these very like long-winded beliefs that they hold on to, and why they fight and why they're doing what they do. And Dune will basically react to this like a deer in the headlights. He has no fucking idea what anyone is talking about. He's just on his own. He's completely on his own quest, and like throughout the story, as like the fact that he is such a disruptive force almost makes him like I've elaborated on this on a couple previous episodes, so it's okay for me to talk. This is not spoiler territory, but like basically as the story evolves, what Lemonheart is actually about is about the story of how Dune accidentally stumbles into a sort of messiah figure for like the Wastelanders, which just comes by virtue of him being so like disruptive and chaotic to like what seems like the status quo of the wasteland and the way things are. And he's like a bull in a china shop with this shit. And like, so yeah, he's just a very fun character. I love writing him. I very much look forward to being able to actually send something you can read, Tyler, because I know that I know that the rest of you have at least read a chunk of it. I know, Tyler, you haven't, and I will send something soon.
I'm waiting.
I always love hearing about Dune. I always love hearing about him. Yeah, Tyler, go ahead.
I have a clarifying question that helps me understand this. Because the last I heard, he wasn't a teenager, but teenager is a wide range. I cannot see a 13-year-old doing this. So how old is he? You keep saying teen, he's child, 18. Man. He's 18. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
I had like, I would obviously have some reservations about writing about a underage porn addict. So yeah, no, he's 18. This is not a child causing war and doing terrorism.
Doing the terrorism.
Insert Matthew McConaughey meme. Be a lot cooler if he did. Anyways, so that was the one like glaring clarification that I needed on this. My second one, anyone with moral sense or ambiguity, you might want to plug your ears in 3, 2, 1. So what's Dune's favorite type of porn, eh? What's the collection got in it?
God.
That's so important that he goes hunting for it, huh?
So okay, so this is actually an interesting part of it. So Dune's no, hey, don't laugh. I'm getting to something. I'm getting to something.
You're valid. You're valid. Go ahead.
No. I'm getting to something here. Give me a second.
Okay, do it.
Basically, Dune. So he is. So Dune. So like when you say favorite type of porn, Dune doesn't really like where he lives. His village. They basically have no electricity. And what little electricity they have is basically all spent on like heat, because that otherwise they would die of the cold within like basically a day. So basically, it's whatever he can get his hands on. It's mostly like old magazines and stuff, like like Playboy, that sort of thing. It's not really like I guess porn in a modern understanding. It's more like erotica. It's basically it's erotica. It's anything that will just activate his neurons. He will grapple onto that shit for dear life.
So he doesn't just have like a DVD full of like tentacle porn.
He does not have a DVD. There is no. Hang on. There is a character who's into tentacle porn. They're not on my list for today. There is a. There is a whole arc with another character named Lovecraft, whose whole deal is that she's an artist, and there's this whole arc where he finds out that she has like secret art, essentially.
Gabe, how dare you? Lovecraft, he was more than tentacles, but also Alex, I'm glad you and I are on the same wavelength with this one. Not excited.
Glad to know.
I'm genuinely surprised that all the people that could have asked that question, it came from you.
I don't think it's that surprising, honestly.
No, I was just glad to be like Alex on the same wavelength, asking about the porn proclivities. Glad
the porn proclivities. It's an important question to ask.
I think when I was reading that the first time in class, I was just imagining more like Playboy bunny magazines.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking that way too. Yeah,
I think in what I've sent that you guys have read, it's explicitly stated to be magazines, and it's just like mentioned like it's women in lingerie or something.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's not anything like super hella explicit. It's just
it's explicit, but it's not like it's not like porn.
Yeah. It's lewd.
And it's more comes from the fact that like so basically the culture of his cannibal village has reached like what another character refers to as cannibalistic metastasis, which is essentially what this character refers to as a state of a cannibal culture where it will have no more generations, and where it's basically just like diverted to madness. Dune, he's himself is not like a cannibal, but he does live among them. The opening bit is basically him like finding pine cones and berries and a raw bird to eat, because he will do anything to not eat people. I wanted to make that that was like an important thing for me when I was first characterizing him. I was like okay, I don't want Dune to be a cannibal. I feel like that will throw people off way too quickly.
Because the rest of it won't.
At least our porn addicted, crazy wasteland messiah. At least he doesn't eat people. Wow, what a good guy!
Yeah.
I know. He has wacky morals.
Give him a medal, just not the person who gives the medal.
Yeah, he has very strange morals where he's like, it basically it comes from the fact that his entire life has been spent in like a vacuum from anything else. He barely has an understanding of basic morality or like attachment stuff. And most of the story is him sort of learning a lot of this stuff while also accidentally becoming the Wastelander Messiah. It's like a fucked up, more violent version of Life of Brian.
Got it.
So, like, does he read the magazines just for the articles then, since he's such a good-hearted, moral being?
Yeah, there's some serious journalism in those.
Yeah, there's some good
He does not read them just for the article. Yeah, no, he does not read them just for the articles.
Can he read?
He cannot.
I was about to say, doesn't seem like this culture you've got here values literacy.
No, they don't value literacy. They're fucked up.
God, he's missing out on the best part of Playboys.
He sounds like a character you've put a lot of thought into, though, and like the how do I want to say this? The like, I want to say repercussions, but that's not the right word.
Consequences?
Implications. The implications of like the society he lives in and like how that would affect him and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the important world building stuff that sometimes we forget to do.
Yeah, he's very. It's like because he grew up in this culture and because he grew up in the North, he has not even just like his nature being disruptive, but like just his presence is kind of disruptive because like, so this is like it's a post-apocalyptic story. There's no fantasy or anything, so there aren't like any like different types of humans mostly, except for the Northlanders. The Northlanders have essentially. They've lived in like nuclear winter tundra for hundreds of years. They've they're built different now. Most of them are, including Dune. Their two biggest characteristics, and these are characteristics that Dune has, is they're very pale. They're like kind of frighteningly pale, and they have their teeth are like fucked up and weird, and like they're more carnivorous because like they basically adapted to just having to eat raw meat because you can't light a fire in the North most of the time. So he just has a naturally disruptive presence when he's among all these like very normal humans, and he looks like this. He sort of looks like a
vampire.
Like a vampire, yeah.
You and your cold vampires, huh?
The Northlanders are not vampires in this story, but I am very into the idea of cold vampires. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, I've noticed. It's a very interesting thing to be like interested in.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of motifs in my stories. Once I'm actually at a point where I can start like churning them out, like they'll become really obvious. Number one is the cold vampires, and number two is mechs. I put mechs into literally everything I write. It's a sickness, really.
Amazing.
Awesome.
But
yeah, that's it. That's all I've got to say about Dune. Is there any other questions?
Let's move on to Brooke then.
Huh. Okay.
It's your turn.
All right. Damn, I sound so boring now. Fuck. Anyway, I'm going to talk about my beloved Zeyla, though. Listen.
Yeah, do it.
Don't undersell yourself, dude.
Y'all got fucking goddesses and orcs and porn boys, and I've got Zeyla.
Porn boys. Oh my god. We really run the gamut on the podcast, everyone. Goddesses to porn boys. We got it all.
Okay. Zeyla Irakoze. She's the main character of the book that I've been working on for like 2 years now. I don't even fucking know what to say about her. She's a spy and a thief. I think when I started the story, I was like really into like the whole thieving, lithy character kind of deal. So I was like, I want to make small spider girl. She climb. She sneak.
We love that here.
I fucking do. That shit's my jam. So I made her, but she's not too small. She's 5'6". I decided that I don't want any of my characters to be like really small. So she's 5'6". Her sister is 5'9", if I remember correctly. And the story starts off with her and her sister, and then her sister dying. So I think that's a great motivator.
That'll do it. That'll kickstart a plot.
The thing is, it's like doesn't have any effect at first because she's just dead and she's sad. When I first imagined her, I think she was just like a blank slate. Like, you know when people draw characters and they just have like a completely like white person, it's just like literally white, nothing in it, and it just says YN. That's what she looked like in my head when I was creating the story. Like I had the story going and it was color, but she was just like this weird paper piece moving through the story. And then it was one day when I was rewatching Star Wars: The Clone Wars. There's a character in that called Twi'la, and I was like, oh, that's Zeyla. So I modeled Zeyla after Twi'la. So she's lovely and dark, and she has big dreads, and she's gorgeous, and I love her. She has her best friend Matthias and a friend named Jamesy, who I switched because when I originally wrote the story, Jamesy was her best friend, and then everyone was always pronouncing it as Jamsy. So it's like, I'm just gonna swap out the names here real quick because I don't really care if a side character gets misnamed. I literally do not care. Like, he's still important to the plot. Like she still really likes him, and he's important because in the society that they live in like a tyrannical monarchy. He's one of the guards because it's like pretty common for students to get high grades and then go into the guard program. So he's just one of those kids that just got good grades, and he's a good guy, but he's part of the guards and people don't like the guards. But she's friends with him, and he's one of the impactors of her character because when he gets killed in a fight, what motivates her to not kill any guards whenever she can. And when she gets hired into or like selected to be part of the resistance, she just refuses to kill any guards, and she starts the revolt in the lower ring of the city, where she turns the guards against the monarchy instead of having to kill everyone. And she's a massive fucking crybaby. I don't think I've ever written anyone crying so goddamn much. Like, she's really fucking stubborn and emotional, and she distrusts everyone until she does trust them, and she's fiercely loyal, and she just cries all the time. I realized when I was rereading all my chapters, every single chapter almost has her crying. I was like, Jesus. But you know what?
She's just
that's okay.
Her emotions.
Yeah, she's stressed. It's fair. She's allowed to be stressed, and oh, right. Oh, Jesus, how did I forget this part? In the lower ring where they work, it's very common for people to like lose limbs and like face injuries and stuff. So when I was designing her, I was like, I want her to have modifications. So I gave her specifically 2 metal fingers. She only has 2 metal fingers on her left hand, her pinky and ring finger. So whenever she's tapping her fingers, which she likes to do a lot, it makes like a click, click.
Love that.
Sharp
awesome.
Click. She just
top tier character.
I love it, yeah. Just those 2. I like it. I think in later chapters, I'll kind of redesign them so they have like flip back features so they can have picking tools because she's a thief by nature, right? So she already has like lock picks and tools to get into places. So it's like, why not just put them into her body? That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the whole motivator for her to even get into like the fight against the monarchy to bring it down is because it's normal to get conscripted into the army that's fighting the other country. When you're 21, I think she's 20. They give you a few years. Like, you finish school when you're 16 so that you can have a few productive years in the workforce so you can bring profit to the country, and then they'll ship you off if you're not married or having babies by the time you're 21 to go fight in the war. But for some reason, her dad gets selected, so he gets shipped off sometime after her sister dies. So he's gone from the picture. She really wants to get him back, and then her mom has 2 prosthetic legs and a bunch of lung damage from the factory that she works in, so she needs to get medicine constantly for her mother. And Matthias is helping provide for his family because his mom has 3 triplets, his younger siblings. So Matthias and Zeyla both join the resistance, mostly just to like get medicine for their families because it's really fucking shitty. They don't have medicine, and it's really expensive to get prosthetics and stuff like that. She has a little medallion that her father gave her just before he got shipped off that she wears around her neck. So that's like a key part of her design. She wears goggles and this medallion all the goddamn time, and she has a knife strap across her chest that has like a curved knife. If you've seen like Avatar, the little knife sheath that they have on their chests, that's basically what she has. So just like leather shit there, yeah. But she still refuses to kill people, so I think later I'm going to give her like batons, and she's literally just going to whack people unconscious when she's fighting them.
Yes, highly recommend batons. Definitely.
Yeah. At first I gave her a bug staff, but I was like, no, I just want a baton, like a police kind of baton, probably.
So, I know weaponry. The type of baton you're looking for is called a tonfa, Tonfa. Now, awesome. I have a clarification question. You've talked a lot about character, and interestingly enough, Brooke, I think you're the only one who's talked about like character appearance at length, because I think everyone else was talking a lot about, story stuff, and I, pictured blank slates, so that's great. My clarification question.
Not solid yet.
Yeah. Everyone knows I don't write character appearances at all, so you get to picture whatever you want. Don't ask me for descriptions. I'm not going to give them to you. Sorry, audience. I'm getting, obviously, fantasy vibes, but with the addition of prosthetics and factory and the like, I'm assuming more along the lines of steampunk or industrial revolution setting. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's pretty on the nose. I had this set kind of like in a future, like a post-apocalyptic dystopian, not like super post-apocalyptic. It was like implied that there was a massive shit show a couple thousand years ago where a bunch of countries broke apart and like things went to shit, and this is how Imperia formed because it was one of the surviving islands. Wait, just a quick question. Can anyone hear the shower?
No.
Nope.
Awesome. Cool. Awesome.
My next leading question would be, given the time period, do you have firearms? Because firearms change the dynamic of war, of policing, of how your characters are going to interact with the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's firearms and stuff. Zeyla herself preferably won't use them. She doesn't want to kill at all. Matthias carries a gun around him at all times. Everyone else has guns on them. The guards in Imperia, I call them the boots or the capes. They have stunt staff that they'll use first and foremost to take down resistance. So they'll stun they'll stun the people first, but they also carry rifles and hip guns.
Cool.
Yeah.
I had a thing. I had, like, as you were talking about, like, the fact that Zeyla was, like, she had a lot of pain in her development, like losing her sister, her dad being shipped off. I mean, I don't know how close the relationship is with like with the parents, and then having two very close friends. It seems like there is a lot that Zeyla has to process emotionally, and I would imagine that the trauma of losing her sister, like how like affecting is that to Zeyla's plot?
I mean, okay.
And I ask that, Brooke, because like grief is a very powerful motivator in a lot of stories, especially if it happens to like the main protagonist, right?
Yeah. The thing is, when I have that chapter with her sister dying, it's I think it's 7 years a time skip. Like it's the beginning, they're in the house together, her sister leaves, dies, doesn't come back kind of thing. And then it skips 7 years in the future when Zeyla's 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure I accidentally let it slip in other podcasts, so I don't really care if I mention it again. But her sister isn't actually dead.
Yeah.
And she will find that out.
Buy it though if she.
Oh yeah, but it's like 7 years of processing. She's decently okay with it. So same with her dad, because they do still occasionally get letters from him, so they know that he's alive. He just can't come back. And then she's had time to get over Rusan. Like she's still really upset that Rusan is dead, and she thinks about her often. And I was thinking when I was starting the story, there'd be like close to the anniversary of her dying, just to like touch on that again, because I didn't want to just like skip over it. But it does happen pretty quickly that she finds out that her sister is alive again, and that's why she goes through like a lot of turmoil. She's like, "What the fuck? I thought you were dead. Why are you living it up in the palace? What's going on?"
Yeah, and I mean like that is interesting. The fact that the sister actually isn't like dead, because exploring grief is one thing, but exploring like a relationship that has been built after such a traumatic event like that's interesting. That's really cool to hear. I want to see how that develops like throughout the story.
Yeah, it's like that was the thing. It's like I didn't want to have her dealing with the death of her sister. I wanted that to be like a focal point of her relearning to trust her sister, like a character redemption kind of thing. But Jamesy was the one that I was like, this is where she has death like truly affect her and change how she sees the world, because that's what gets her to like not be at all on the resistance side of killing any of the guards just because they're guards. Like she wants to give them a chance. Unlike fucking Finn in goddamn Star Wars.
Oh, we're going on that rage again, Marie. All right.
Listen, that was half of my motivation. I was like, this shit sucks. I'm gonna do it better. Watch me.
I got one last question for you.
God, yeah.
One last
How many
question.
stories have I started writing out of spite?
Oh my god.
Spite right?
Just like you watch something and I'm like, this shit. I was so into this until like the last bit. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I can do this better. I can
What
fix
the
it.
question?
So, my last question then is: you've got a thief with lockpicks and a prosthetic, very good at climbing and remaining stealthy. So you're gonna play a rogue in D&D. Got it. I'll get you a character sheet.
The funny thing is, when I was creating a character, I made a fighter.
You know what? That's actually a really good exercise. Like, creating an OC using the D&D character builder. I never thought of doing that.
It's great.
Yeah.
Careful with it. It lends you into archetypes and makes you think about certain things, and you end up changing a bit of your story to fit a D&D archetype as opposed to making the D&D archetype fit. It's an okay exercise, but I do warn against it a little bit. Yeah. It's for a game, right? Using Hero Forge to build character models is different because you're not rooted in rules, but trying to attach rules to a character, it's okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Alternatively, have any of you ever like gone through some of your characters and tried to figure out what they would be in a D&D game?
No.
I have no idea.
Porter is definitely a rogue.
Fighter.
Yeah.
I think most of my characters would be fighters.
Yeah.
I think it's just a well-rounded like thing for protagonists, unless it's like a wacky story. I have a question. Zeyla's fingies.
Fingies.
I was that actually something I was super curious about that. So like, so there's this culture where like there's like body modifications are like a very common thing.
Oh yeah, like like not intentional body modifications. They don't go to a place and be like, I want to get my hands modified. It's literally just like they lose appendages in the factories quite frequently, or they'll have like a bunch of lung damage, shit like that. So they'll get replacements.
That is actually sort of what I was curious about, because I was like, is this just like our body modifications a normal thing, or is this like a culture where people are like, hey, doc, I want you to cut my whole arm?
Yeah, no, I wasn't going like super sci-fi with that kind of thing. I didn't. Yeah, it's literally just a bad situation. Like obviously they don't want to lose their limbs, but when they do, they have like really I do struggle a little bit with trying to figure out the advancements of it, because this is like technically a future world. They have some advancements. There's going to be some technology from other countries that will be more advanced than what we have now. Mm-hmm. But I want this to be kind of behind the times, seem older. So I don't want them to have like awesome prosthetics. I don't want them to have like super flexible fingers. Like she has flexible fingers, but that's because she replaced just the fingers and not the entire hand.
So like,
but like her mom is kind of walking around on like very rickety sticks, basically.
Okay.
So she doesn't walk much. She has to just do like work at home, or like just do work with her hands. Like she can't do much anymore because she can't really walk.
So like sort of like a like automail, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's easy to fix something small, but then losing a leg, losing an arm, that costs more.
So how did she lose her fingers then? Because that was my follow-up question.
She's basically like a cleaner in the factories. They have a bunch of buildup in like the vents and shit. So she's small and light and can climb shit. So she goes up into like the vents and whatnot and cleans stuff. But one time her hand just got stuck in a fan and just chopped off 2 of her fingers.
Oh.
And her sister technically died in a vat of boiling chemicals.
Oh no.
Lovely. Holy shit.
How very Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I didn't think of a way to like have her mom lose her legs. I didn't think it really mattered. I just wanted her to not have her legs.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I needed her to be sick, so I was like, she doesn't have her legs and her lungs are shitty. There we go.
Take away this bitch's legs.
Well, that's like, yeah. Because like it's a possibility to get better replacements if you have more money, which is why it's significant to live in higher rings, because then you can get better prosthetics, and or flee the country, which, as they're aware, the only other country that they can flee to is their enemy country. So they can't do that.
Yeah, no, that's cool as hell, dude.
Like, Brooke, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, your characters are cool. Your world sounds awesome.
Yeah.
There's so fucking much going on. But she's just a regular girl. The only thing interesting is that she has the fucking fingers.
And she's a rogue, and she has a really cool, unique personality. And
she's asexual.
Like she's at least level 5.
She's a revolutionary.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just feels cliche whenever I'm writing, because I just go with like the usual like YA protagonist.
Short, dude.
Cliches are there for a reason. They're good.
It's popular for a reason.
Yeah.
You're good.
I know. I just don't want to make another Katniss, because she is kind of like being a Katniss with like the head of the revolution. She won't be. Like, she'll be put in the bottom for a long time, but then eventually she's the one that like sways the lower rings to fight and gets the guards on their side, right? Then she basically is a Mockingjay. It's like,
Well, you don't want her to be a Katniss? Have her fucking suck with a bow. Have her get one and just fail miserably.
I don't want her using a bow.
You don't even want to entertain the idea of a bow being like near her.
What fucking is different about my character is she does not have a fucking love interest. The only time that it's ever potentially applied is with other people being like, he and Matthias, right? And she's like, ew, he's like my brother. And or when fucking Prince Alaric is disgusting, he's like, you're like your sister.
Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. No romance in this bitch.
I mean, yeah, that's a good subversion of what the typical YA protagonist is. Like, what, a lot of
No
YA
love
books.
triangle? We love that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I remember this one time that me and my friend Eva, we went to a Chapters and we went through the YA section and we were like, okay, here's the challenge. We cannot leave this Chapters until we find a YA book that does not contain within in the little blurb a mention of a love interest. And we were in there for 4 hours.
I win.
That's incredible. Oh my god.
Diamond Daggers would be in that section as well.
Oh yeah, we win.
Hell yeah.
But I think we can, unless there's anything else you'd like to share, I think we can move on to Tyler.
I'm done. Oh, actually, there was one thing, because Tyler immediately mentioned the whole specification of looks thing. That's not really brought up until she sees her sister again, because then she's like comparing the two of them. So it's kind of like a subversion of expectation, because you don't know she's even black until this point happens. So I just wanted to do that little sneak and be like, did you think it was a white girl? You are fooled.
That's cool. I like that. That's cool.
I really wanted that in the story. I wanted people to have their expectations subverted on what she looks like. Because I was like, I don't want you to think of a white girl. I want you to think of this beautiful African Middle Eastern lady.
How bamboozling.
Yes.
Yes. Tyler, why don't you tell us about your first character?
I was about to say, was that my lead-in? Anyways.
Yes.
So, coming off of Brooks, have you ever had a character that you just treat so fucking badly?
Oh, Porter,
anyone?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All of them.
Because I'm terrible to most of my characters. And this first one is very much no exception. So, this comes from a long franchise I was working on back 19, early 20s there. So not that long ago in the grand scheme of dark fantasy. I will have to do a little bit of world explanation. I apologize, just to get what the character is about. The franchise name was initially very terrible. I called it the Poisoneers. I'm glad I scrapped that. Now the Venomists. And our character's called the Adder. Hence my name, the Black Adder. Because he was initially going to be called the Black Adder until I looked it up and found that was a very terrible British sitcom with Rowan Atkinson. So yeah, he is no longer Mr. Bean, thankfully. But I am, because I'm an idiot with this one. So, the Venomists are a cult, basically, that is selective poison assassins. Pretty cliche. Except they have a rule, and it's a loose rule, but it's one that most of them follow. It's kind of... It's kind of weak shit to just go and poison one person. You know what I mean? Anyone could drip a little bit of poison in this one guy's cup. That's fucking easy. You know it's real hard? To poison an army on the march of about 5,000 and to make it look like an accident. They specialize in basically military tactic poisoning. And there's different genres and different flavors of what they can do. Each of the different lines or lineages of these venomists caters to a specific style. So the Adder specifically is about being unassuming, and that's because the snake, the adder, specifically the European brown adder, is common, and the adder genus is all over. They are mildly poisonous, and they can be found on any continent, any climes. Whereas one of the other genuses, the Black Widow, specializes in basically STD poisons and will spread their poisons that way. And I built the whole lineages. So the Adder is who we're going to focus on because he is who the story was going to be about. And I created this whole character's fucking life from when he was born to when he died. I've got a big-ass spreadsheet detailing all the different stories I was going to write, and may still one day. From short stories to full novels to the more saga pieces of his life. We start off with him being born lowly. His mother was a prostitute in one of the... Oh, I should mention, this is very dark fantasy, by the way. So, squeamish listeners, do turn away, because the initial iterations of the Adder were... oh my god. Born to a prostitute down in one of the southern climes of the world I had built. He was going to be a mixed race, kind of helps with his whole blending in any situation deal. Until one of the invading countries who was doing a big old we should own the world conquest, more reasons behind that, but I don't really care to list them, came, took over, murdered his mother in front of him, gave him hardcore PTSD, then took him as a slave because he was young enough to work. Spent a couple years during that until a venomist, the Adder, was hired to take out basically his master's whole household, uses this slave boy to do it by handing him a poison, says, hey, I'll pay you if you go do this thing for me, poisons everyone, including the boy. Everyone else dies while the boy is basically just sitting there puking his guts out, and the Adder is like, oh, you kind of lived through this. You're mine now, and grabs him and takes him away. And there becomes the young Adder, his apprentice. And then he goes through the rest of his life, eventually kills his master to take his mantle, has 2 kids with 2 different, one adversary and one ally, the Viper. Their lineage has a kid with her. Wait, he has 3 kids. I forgot. This man just fucks, apparently. I forgot about that. Ends up siring the next line of the Widow and has a kid with one of his mortal nemesises, sort of. Eventually has his own apprentice, betrays him, has to kill them, doesn't want to take another apprentice, and dies without his lineage continuing. He is not much of a character in and of himself. He was mainly a vessel to explore this whole concept of kind of a poison of the weak that I initially worked on. The idea that he would sneak into an army camp, pretend to be a cook, poison all the soup, and watch them all shit themselves to death. And I used mixes of real-world poisons that I'd studied on, as well as a few fantasy ones to add in, more specific flavors of what I wanted when I didn't want to just strychnine absolutely everyone, because that gets a little boring. Just add, fantasy flavor. There's no magic in this world, at least in the later iterations, mainly because I thought that kind of muddled the process a bit and weakened the strength of what he was. But like I said, he was mostly a blank slate. The idea of the Adder being to go in, assume a role like an actor, and complete their mission. He didn't have much to him. And part of what I explored with him was the idea of the masks. And there's the principle that we have our public mask, our private mask, and the mask that only our family sees, yada, yada. There's different versions of it. Well, he puts on masks every time he goes out. And to him, he even considers the fact that he's a venomist, one of these killing machines. He's actually kind of a chubby guy who really likes cooking a lot, but I digress. He even considers the fact that he's this cultist a mask, because in his mind, he is still that poor slave boy who lost his mother, and he's never really gotten over that. And it plagues him through lots and lots of trauma. So, I really like him. It's a great dark fantasy world build, and I want to go back to it. There are things I'm going to change about it. Because it's dark fantasy, I included way too much sexual assault. It's a staple of the genre, and I do want to get away from it personally. It doesn't need to be dark fantasy, just rife full of these horrible, horrible things. It can still be dark fantasy without. And I'm going to take a lot of that out of the Adder himself as well, because he does some fucked up shit at various points. But yeah, I planned this guy's entire life out, and I still have the full Excel document, and I've read through it in preparation for this, and I do want to go back to him eventually.
That's impressive.
Nice.
What did he get for his 7th birthday?
His 7th birthday?
Yeah.
Probably a little like ragdoll.
Wow, there's an answer. See this? This is and y'all accuse me of putting too much effort into my worlds.
What did you get on his 13th birthday?
A dead mother.
Oh God. Oh.
So, little few things I forgot about this thing. Firstly, where he came from. There's a scene in the King Killer Chronicles, the 2nd book, where Kvothe does something like this, which is where he's kind of based off of. And yeah, initially named them the Poisoneers because it was a mix of poison and engineer, and I'm so glad that I got rid of that because that's a terrible fucking title. My God.
I am also glad you changed it.
Yeah, I've listed all the lineages, their specialties, countries, world history, world leaders, and a whole bunch of really fun stories about him getting fucked over a lot, actually.
Holy
Yeah,
shit.
that's really impressive.
Concerns about my mental health?
A lot of that, yeah.
A little bit.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of questions. Can you send us the document? Can we read it?
I can post, like, I've still named the folder the Poisoneer. That's how old this is, and I'm never going to change it just because it reminds me of where I came from. Another interesting note about this, when I had initially started writing it, I didn't want to use traditional publishing. I was going to read this shit like an audiobook and post it on YouTube. So I even went so far as to make an intro song for it, which is a little nursery rhyme put to music in world about watching out for what you eat just in case a venomous is poison your food.
That's cool.
That's cool. That's really cool, yeah.
That's sick.
And again, lots of in-world references there. And I shouldn't say there isn't any magic. The leader of the Venomist Order is actually an elf, which is technically the old gods because they're not called elves in my setting. And she's basically a naga with a half-snake body, but you very rarely see it because she's often hidden behind a curtain because she doesn't want to come out and get, myrtleized by everyone for being a half-snake monstrosity.
That's so cool, though. I love snake.
Her name is Mother Snake. And if you do good enough and create a new lineage in the Venomist category, she creates the new creature that you're named after. So eventually the adder actually kills a couple of the other Venomists in the lineage for being assholes, basically. Does he kill his own son? No. I say I planned his whole life. I also planned his 3 daughters' lives, 2 daughters' lives, and his granddaughter and grandson's life. But he ends up becoming King Adder, and king in snake terminology does not mean royalty. It means it's a snake that eats other snakes. And so because he has killed other venomists, Mother Snake, creates the King Adder based on him. And so there's a new snake into the world that's named after him.
That's so cool.
That's sick.
I know this is an episode about like characters, but I'm fascinated by this world.
And see, that's why I'm having trouble talking about the Adder himself. He is, again, a lens for me to look at the world. He's meant to be mostly blank, a little traumatized, exploring the masks of his life and his loyalty to the people around him. But besides that, he himself isn't much. I can tell you his favorite method to get into places: loves pretending to be a cook. It's his favorite thing. He used to cook for his mother back in the day, and he still loves to cook. Cooked as a slave boy, hence why he poisoned them there. He'll walk into a camp and be like, I'm good at making soup. You want some soup? Too bad. It's poison, bitch.
Good soup.
Good soup. Poison you.
That's ideal characterization right there.
Yeah. Angry soup man. Not really angry. He's kind of depressed all the time, actually.
Depressed soup man.
Even better.
Depressed soup man. Questions? Guys, I'm on the spot here. I love answering questions about my shit.
What did he get for his 21st birthday?
Beaten.
Oh no.
So actually, by the time he was 21, because I'm looking at my sheet here, he should be on his molting. And so what a molting is it's an apprenticeship program for the Venomists where you have to follow your master around and do what they say and practice underneath them. And when your master says you're good enough to be your own Venomist, you go on what's called your molting. You get a single year to find and poison your master to take their mantle. The poison is your choice. You can kill them or not. If you kill them, you become the new moniker, the new mantle. If you just poison them, you become your own line, depending on your own proclivities. So he's probably on his molting at 21, meaning he is searching the continent for his master, fails his first time because he gets a little sidetracked. The second time, he's like ready for it because he knows he's ready. There's extraneous circumstances as to why he failed the first time. And so when his master goes, all right, I think you're ready for your molting, the young adder goes, good. 3, 2, 1. And then his master drops over dead. Oh, I also forgot 21st birthday. That would be around the time of his first molting. How he started his first molting, his master turns to him and goes, I think you're ready. Pulls out a fucking mace, cracks him in the knee, and then kicks him off the wagon and goes, you've got 1 year, and drives away.
Wow.
Damn.
I told you I'm an asshole to my characters.
Yeah. Starting to pick up on that. Yeah. No, I'm just impressed at how detailed, how you just know all of this.
I'm impressed too, yeah.
What he looks like. He is got beautiful green eyes with a shock of dark hair that's slightly curled at the end. He's got mixed race, so he's got like brownish skin because his mother comes from a northern clime, but his father is actually one of the Middle Eastern sultans down in the southern kingdom areas, which doesn't come up too much. I think he actually kills his dad in one of the stories by accident.
Classic.
Poisons him. Woo. What else does he do? Yeah, his eyes are actually very important later because all nobles of the northern kingdoms in this setting have specialty colored eyes. This is due to their relationship to the actual old elves that put them in command several thousand years ago over these kingdoms, which is long forgotten. And so his eyes are very pretty green, like emerald green.
Very important. It totally doesn't make me think of Sarah J. Maas and Aelin at all.
I know. I still have my cliches.
No. Oh
He's
no.
So I'm sorry.
Oh no.
At least pretty green is like more reasonable than fucking
Ash River
turquoise with a ring
Ash
of
River
gold.
turquoise. Oh my god. Oh,
Anyway.
Oh no.
I see you've traumatized Dean. I do not know what you're referencing. I still think I'm cliche as fuck for a guy that uses poison to have green eyes. I'm still debating fucking changing it.
Listen, I love green eyes. There was a time when all of my main characters had green eyes. It was honestly really bad. But anyway, I think your character, the Adder, sounds very cool. And I hope you have fun revamping that world.
I hope I have the motivation to revamp that world. You know how much shit I have to go back and change? God damn it.
I feel that.
Well, I mean, you've got a lot to work with. But if you're done with that, I think we can move on to our second round, which we can hopefully move through a little faster because we've been going on for quite a while now.
A little bit.
So I will start with my second character. Yeah, let's just try and pick up the pace for the second half, I guess. So the character I'm going to talk about is Alys. She's. I've mentioned in the past that when I was first coming up with the idea for Katariana and kind of like fleshing out the world, I had 2 stories that were kind of like motivating me to do that. One of them was the Diamond Dagger, which I've talked about before, and the other one is the story that Alys comes from, which is currently untitled because the original title I came up with was really bad. Alys, full disclosure, started out as a self-insert. I don't know if you can tell by the name. But I do think she's one of my
actually flew over my head. That actually flew over my head.
Same here.
Yes, straight over.
It's like one sound difference. Also, Alys spelled Alys for the record. I will send you actual names later, though, Dean. So
thank you.
But yes, Alys. She's one of my more interesting self-inserts, I think, because I think she's the most different than who I was when I created her. She's very social and outgoing. She loves being around people. She loves talking to people. She like thrives off attention. She's very, very like outwardly passionate. Like if something makes her happy, she's going to show it. If something pisses her off, she's gonna show it and probably do something about it. She's not very good at like hiding her emotions, which is interesting. Like she's just very, if she feels it, you're gonna know it. I guess something that's fairly important to her character is she is a twin. She has a twin sister named Eve, and the two of them are very, very close. Alys is fun. She's very bright. She loves fashion, which is probably the thing we have most in common. And goes out of her way to like, be with all the new trends and stuff. She likes wearing bright colors and she loves being the center of attention. She's probably like my least book smart protagonist. Which sounds very weird to say, but she's not interested in academia at all. She's more of all of her knowledge is very like social knowledge. She understands people better than she understands things like math or books or history. She can be good at that stuff if she puts like her mind to it, but it just doesn't interest her. She'd rather just be around people. Yeah, she's very fun. I only put her through a little bit of hell when I violently murdered off her family and stuff.
Oh yeah, real minuscule there, Alex.
Real minuscule. There's a bit of an arc where she almost dies, and then as a result of that almost dying, starts turning into a vampire.
Right on.
Yeah,
that's minor.
As one does.
Minor.
Yeah, just
minor.
It's so brief. It's so brief. I'm just flowing through the pages.
It's a wacky little detour.
She goes through some rough shit. My poor girl. She's also probably one of my youngest protagonists. I haven't figured out the exact age because I'm dealing with planets. She was born on one planet, but then grows up on a different planet, and they have different like year lengths. So I'm still trying to figure out what her exact age would be. But she's like, the story starts when she's like starting her first day of high school, her first year of high school. So she's like 14, 15-ish maybe. So she's very young, very baby, goes through a lot of shit. But I think she comes out stronger on the other side and hopefully gets some compensation.
Therapy?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Eventually, she'll get there. Yeah, that's Alys. Any questions?
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I know Katariana is really old, Alex. How long has it taken you to develop this character? And because they're a character that was associated with Katariana, like what was the progression from when they were first created to like the character that you brought up or that you're talking about right now?
I honestly think she hasn't changed that much from her original iteration. She's definitely like less shallow than she was like originally, like not like as like a person, but as like a character. I feel like I've reached further into like her depths and tried to understand her motivations and stuff better. Okay, thanks, Tyler. That distracted me.
Oh, what was that?
He changed his name again.
Well, I see that, yeah, but
I'm sure we'll get there.
We'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, but yeah, I think she hasn't changed that much since her original iteration. She's still very like loud and opinionated and not afraid to show it, but now she's just, I understand her like introspective side a little bit more. She's not one that's like big on introspection, but she definitely has struggles. And I think she very much fits the archetype of like a character who on the outside appears very strong, and so doesn't want that to kind of falter. So I guess, like I said, she tends to show her emotions. I think probably like sadness or any struggle is the one thing that she would hide, just because she's used to being like the strong one, the one who says what she's thinking. And so when she's going through shit, she doesn't want people to know that, because that's not who she is. So I think that's the one thing about her that's really changed.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like the strong character. I always like really enjoy seeing like how a writer kind of like breaks them apart. I think just like how I mean is that just what is it that they develop and what is it that the writer makes this character like be strong for, and how is it represented? Like it's always so cool to see.
Yeah, well, that's her sister. Her sister's the quiet one, the one that like needs support. Like in their dynamic, that's how it kind of works. And obviously that's not how people work, but that's just kind of how they've like established themselves. And so it gets to a point where they kind of have to reverse that. And yeah, this story is very much about them, twins, like figuring out how to be independent and not completely rely on each other, but also like how to rely on each other in a way that they hadn't before. Yeah, I love these two characters. They hold a very special place in my heart.
Nice.
I have a possibly very quick question. Okay, so this has been a on my mind since you said. How does one almost become a vampire?
So the way vampirism works in this world is it's kind of like it's done through like the exchange of blood, which I think is very common in vampire fiction, where like the vampire drinks the blood and then the person needs to like consume the vampiric blood as well in order to become a vampire. Most of the time when this happens, it happens very quickly or like methodically, where the vampire drinks and then like feeds the blood, and it's enough for like the transformation to happen within a matter of hours. But sometimes it can also happen unintentionally, where someone who has been bitten by a vampire can consume a small amount of blood that takes a lot longer to like fully develop into the curse, as it were. So that's what happens to Alys, is she gets just a little tiny bit, and it slowly happens over like the course of like at least half a year, before it is discovered and reversed.
Damn. Okay.
I was trying to be sneaky about the name change, by the way.
You're not successful. I was very distracted.
I caught you before the name changed. I saw your icon change, and I was like, oh no.
That
Did it make a notification? Because I have my notifications turned off, so apologies if it dinged while you were talking. It's not the intention.
Oh, no,
I have mine's turned off.
I just have Discord open.
I'm looking at Discord, and I literally just saw your name move from the bottom to the middle, and I was like, I didn't even like see what happened. I just saw something change, and then I noticed.
Well, here we are revealing my secrets. Continue.
But no, unless there's any other dying questions, we'll jump over to Gabe.
Or dying noises.
Gabe, no.
Gabe.
Dean.
It's Dean.
I forgot.
I mean, Gabe, you can go first if you want, because like I don't know.
We know you're next. We follow the order. If we don't have rules, we have chaos, and if we have chaos, then just go, Dean.
Okay.
Dean, go. I'm just used to Dean going before me. That's why. But yes, it's your turn. Go. Okay. Second character. Go.
Got it. I'm surprised I didn't talk about Porter the first time that we did this, because Porter is the protagonist of Xeno, and she and she is essentially like in this weird spot right now for me, because I've talked about Porter like numerous times to you guys, to Mari, and like to my family even, and they don't even read any of the things that I've written, and Porter means so much to me as a character, but at the same time I confess it's in a weird, like I say it's in a weird spot, because Porter in her current state is somehow my favorite character, but there are things missing. There are gaps in Porter's story that need to be filled in, basically. And I think all of that starts as soon as Linnea is introduced into the story. And pretty much everything up until Linnea's introduction, and maybe Tyler can vouch for this, it defines Porter well enough to the point where everyone gets an idea of how she is with Magna, her best friend, the relationship that she has with her mother, who's missing in the story, eventually the relationship that she has with Linnea, and all the other, and there's another prominent relationship, pseudo relationship with Juno, which is really just meant to be serving as exposition for the world and such. And I say Porter is, well, I'll acknowledge the positives for Porter right now. She is, I think, one of my favorite characters that I think I've ever created, really. She is, if we're talking about appearances, she is 5'8". She has, well, I mean, I can always just read the description of her character, but she's 5'8", has ebony lock. No, it's not ebony. It's brown hair, brown short hair, chopped towards the neckline, so it's a bob basically. Deep umber eyes, brown skin on the darker side, and is also very. It's like Zeyla, so also a thief character, but at the same time, very proficient in magic, due to the affiliation with their mom. And I think just with the relationships that she has are the things that I love developing the most in Porter's story, like how she views herself, how she views the relationship with her mother, how she views the relationship with Magna, and essentially the relationship with the goddess. And I'll go through each one of them really quickly. Porter hates herself in a way that she isn't being honest about. She's trying to come to terms with many things, or many things in her current situation and in her past, and a lot of trauma has to be worked around that, or a lot of trauma has to be worked around, and exploring that trauma and how much it is that she loathes herself essentially is both really interesting to do and very cool to do at the same time. I don't want to say that thing. I don't want to say that writing about trauma is always thing. It's always exciting because that's obviously a lot of sensitive material, but at the same time, for such an important character, I don't want it to just be trauma dump after trauma dump. I want it to really be why is it that a character with such high prominence loathes herself? A lot of the saving grace that she has, or saving grace, a lot of the credit that she owes to essentially saving her life is her mom, who is painted as this incredible influence in her life that may or may not even be alive by the start of the story. And that kind of I was playing on some themes of codependency there, but I don't even know enough about it, so I've kind of shelved that. I don't want to, I obviously don't want to write something that I'm not familiar with. And with that being said, like her mom means a lot to Porter. It's one of the reasons why she was like a very influential figure in, like I said, is essentially saving her life because of the person that she is, the chances that her mother would give her, the forgiveness that Porter never felt like she deserved. And doubling, like adding on to that, is the relationship that she has with Magna, who's been a childhood friend, a lover at one point, then an ex at one point, then a friend again. And by the start of the book, there, like, all of that is like building on all of that, like going from someone where there used to be a lot of love in that relationship, and suddenly now it's in this weird gray area where they don't really know what it is that they're doing. It's all very positive, but I want to explore that kind of uncertainty and anxiety when it comes to, like, what are we? And meanwhile, the relationship with Linnea is inherently very new, so that I haven't really been diving into super long, but it's adding into things. It's adding into what I was talking about when it came to Linnea, and how is all of this stigma, like, surrounding me really truthful? Like, is it really because I am such a terrible person, or am I going to be better than this? And it's exploring Porter's mental health. That is a very interesting continuation of the story for me, because the way that I've pictured it, Porter very much struggles with a lot of anxiety. There are points in the story where she's contemplating about Magna and her relationship, like, what if this is bad, like, what if this is happening, what if that is happening? And hopefully through what I'm doing, it's expressing that kind of anxiety, like, in a visual way. I mean that, like, through text, all of that is coming through, but at the same time, just figuring out how to write anxiety and write, like, panic disorders and the uncertainty of, like, yourself, and like, being uncertain with your own self and being uncertain about the people around you. That is very fascinating to explore, because Porter originally started not struggling with any of these things. In fact, when I first introduced Porter into the world, she was a thing. She was not the thing. She was not the 21-year-old like, daughter of a thing. She was not the 21-year-old daughter of a very powerful sorcerer, basically, but instead, like, an independent sniper in like, far future cyberpunk Seattle. And I'm like, that isn't lining up anymore. So through numerous iterations, it's I think the reason why, to sum up, the reason why Porter is such a fascinating character for me, and one of my favorite characters, is the exploration of uncertainty. As a very anxious character who has lived a pretty, like, traumatic and hard life, it's interesting, like, playing into what it is that she struggles with and how difficult it is for just her to try and navigate it, like, and especially with mental health surrounding, like, anxiety and panic, just how much of that really interferes in the story, because anxiety interferes in real life. So yeah, spiel over.
It's good. I think it's important to like your protagonist.
Yep, definitely agree.
And as someone who's read all that you've put out for Porter, send me more. Keep going. But also, I do see the anxiety angle, and I don't see too much of the self-loathing in what I've read, but it's kind of important not to just have your character rag and self-pity themselves as well.
Of course, yeah.
So I imagine we're working on it. But definitely the anxieties. And you were talking about the uncertainty between Magna and Porter. And I see that there a lot. Porter's inner monologue is very important to that. You do get to see a lot of what you're talking about in how she thinks about things around her partnerships, her life, and all that jazz.
And all that jazz.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the self-loathing thing is maybe a new development, I think, because I'm thinking about this, just there is no way that after everything that Porter's been through that she wouldn't have some positivity about what she's been through and who she's with and herself in general. It's something that obviously I am going to try to like work around, but she does, and I figure that she does have a lot of like internal hatred, whether it is whether it is the relationships that she is not properly maintained, or the trust and forgiveness that she feels like she's misused and taken for granted, basically. Just that is maybe just a new concept and maybe just a new angle in my head to explore with Porter, and whether or not it sticks with her in the final draft, I'm not sure yet, but just yeah, I would imagine just when it comes to the self-loathing, like that was something that I really hadn't considered too much with her, because there's a lot of like mystery and wonder and magic happening in the story, and all of that is fun to write too, and through her lens it's all fresh and it's all really exciting, but at the same time, like, it's a very personal story for her. It's not like rescuing some person that she doesn't know, it's going after her mom. So I would imagine just for the anxious person that she is, there would be a lot of moments where, because her mother's gone, she must be taking a lot of the love that her mother gave her for granted, and a lot of these memories like may be helping her, like they may be helping her in the long run, like they may be helping her like soothe herself, but at the same time her mother isn't there, and whether or not she could have stopped it and whether or not she's able to save her, that weighs a lot on someone. I would imagine so. That's Porter. I'm putting her through new sets of trauma every day.
As is our right as writers.
Mm-hmm.
One of these days, our characters are going to unionize and tell us to stop putting them through shit, and then what are we going to do?
I'm not going to stop them. I'm pro-union. What were you going to say, Dean? Were you going to say something anti-union, Dean?
No, nothing. Never mind.
I think exploring relationships is a really fun part of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's Porter. Gabe, what do you got for us?
So, okay, so one of the things that I was like deliberating on, like until earlier today, was the second character I want to talk about, because I know I want to talk about Dune, and also from Lilian, I want to talk about one of the faction leaders, because I don't think it's any secret that this post-apocalyptic wacky story is inspired by Fallout. I've talked about Fallout a billion bajillion times, and factions are very important in Fallout. So naturally, I was like, I need to make factions a very important part of Lemonheart. So, and the factions in Lemonheart are very weird. But I in the end, I landed on a character to talk about today. At least I can always talk about the others because they're all very interesting after the podcast. But the character I want to talk about on the podcast is a character named Lilian Lacombe, aka the Queen in Red, who she is the leader of a faction who are known as the Pirate Kings. They're in my opinion, they're sort of like the most fun to write of the Wasteland factions. Essentially, the Pirate King's whole deal and Lilian's whole deal is that they're a group of people who found copies of a pre-war book series called One Piece.
Oh God!
and became deeply obsessed with it, believing that it was a real that it was a historical document. Essentially, they believed that the story of One Piece was very, very real, actually happened, and that finding all copies of One Piece is essentially like a almost a holy quest. So One Piece, a book about a MacGuffin, has become a MacGuffin for this group of people. They're a lot of fun to write. So the reason I wanted to talk about Lilian is essentially just that they're like a lot of the factions have very like more complicated beliefs than that and more reasons to be a faction, but the Pirate Kings are very much in line with the sort of the tone of Lemonheart. They are they're sort of uncaring about like politics and stuff. They just want to read One Piece and be pirates, and how they're pirates is actually kind of interesting. So they have essentially they're landlocked because the access to the water is like insufficient in the middle of a desert. So what they have are essentially these massive tanks that are built to be the shape of a pirate ship, but they're attached to giant wheels, and they just go across the big desert. So I just
like that slaps a little bit. Not gonna lie.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're very cool. I'm a big fan of them. They're not that complex. They're not that deep, but I do really like them, and I think their role in sort of the factions world is kind of interesting too. Like this is becoming less and less about Lilian and more about the lore. I'm sorry.
Hey, you heard my ramble. Go hard.
I did. Yeah, I did. Okay. Essentially, like the Pirate Kings were like the most recent, not the most recent, but they're like the one of the more recent factions to enter into sort of what is known as like the nomad area of the wasteland. The nomad area just essentially being like a big swath of desert where there isn't really much of anything. Most of the cities have just completely fallen apart. It's essentially what's left of the American Midwest is just big, empty fucking nothing. As it is now, pretty much.
I was going to say, is that not the American Midwest right now?
It's called the Midwest because every single thing there is mid. But yeah, they're... I think Lilian's interactions with some of the other faction members is also very interesting because like she's not a religious zealot, but like she's very much like devoted to the idea of
One Piece.
To One Piece. It makes it even funnier that I have never watched or read One Piece in even like a single bit.
That makes me feel better.
I have never engaged with One Piece in even the slightest. I just thought this. I remember I thought of this idea. I was trying to think of like, okay, how would a world? Because essentially, like when the war happened, there was a big event which I can't get into. There was a big event that caused what is essentially the destruction of all like digital information. And following the war, there was like a 140-year period where society was sort of rebuilding. There wasn't a lot of time for like archiving or anything. So this is now a world where like most information is that remains is completely decontextualized from like where it exists. And I was like, okay, what's a very extreme example of how I could do that? Oh, I don't know. A group of people who believe that One Piece is real and that the characters in it are their gods. I was like, okay, that's the most extreme thing I could think of. And that's where I went with all that. And Dean?
I was gonna ask, like, I'll let you finish up after.
No, go for it. I'm kind of rambling. I didn't really have like this is sort of the thing that I was deliberating on, because I have more to say about some of the other faction leaders because they're more characters and less funny. But this character was funny, and so I want to talk about it in this episode. But Dean, go ahead. What's your question? I'm just rambling.
It's kind of like unrelated to Lilian and more about the Pirate Kings. Is it only a single volume of One Piece?
Okay, this is a good opportunity for lore. So
I'd firstly like to apologize to Alex for further engaging in One Piece. I know, I'm sorry.
I hate One Piece. I hate One Piece with like a burning passion.
Oh no!
Dude, I could hear your fucking sigh from here, and I don't mean through the comm. Like I could hear you from the fucking window. But like no, like actually, because you were talking about.
Don't get me wrong, Gabe. Don't get me wrong, Gabe. It is really funny. I just really hate One Piece.
It's like I don't take any offense to that, because I am not a One Piece fan. This was not like oh, I want to put something that I love into this. This was like, oh, this would be funny.
Yeah.
It is funny. I just really hate One Piece.
Yeah. So is it just like a single volume of One Piece, or is it like they come across like an old library where it's just One Piece because no one should or has bought them?
Yes. So essentially, so when I'm actually gonna have to go into a bit of a lore deep dive to explain that.
Oh god.
They come across the collection of some weeb that was just really into One Piece.
Yeah, pretty much. Essentially, so when the war happened, there was a big power vacuum, and there was an establishment of like 4 like sort of bigger, more structuralized civilization type groups, and one of them was called Atlantica, and they were formed in the ruins of Florida. Because I also thought it would be funny to think that post-apocalyptic Florida would turn into a mad medieval kingdom.
That's not very Floridian.
So essentially, the Pirate Kings formed shortly after the fall of Atlantica, which is, I can't remember what year exactly. I think it's supposed to be 2211 is when Atlantica falls. So they formed shortly after fall of Atlantica, and they formed a city called Libertalia, where they have the Library of Libertalia, which is just all One Piece. Their whole culture is just finding copies of One Piece, bringing it back to the library. So they just have an entire building filled wall to wall with fucking One Piece copies.
Fucking One Piece.
Oh my god.
It's fucking painful.
I have no questions, just concerns.
That's right, fair. Oh, descriptions. I forgot descriptions the first time. Dune's description isn't like super in depth. He's a pale, skinny, blonde boy with sharp teeth. That's all he was. Lilian has sort of more design. She's dressed like a pirate. She's got super long red hair, and I'm trying to think, I don't know how to describe her outfit more than she is dressed like a pirate. She is dressed like a pirate. she's got the.
Are we talking like Jack Sparrow pirate or?
Yeah,
talking like sexy Halloween pirate.
No, I'm talking. She looks like a drunk.
Okay.
She looks like So her and another faction leader named Commissar Stanislav, who I can't get into because there are 2 faction leaders who Dune like sort of connects to while he's on his journey, because he has like he relates to them very well. He relates to Lilian's sort of like mad pirate ramblings, and he relates to Stanislav's. If you can't guess the name, Stanislav is like a huge communist. He is the biggest communist, and his role in the story is essentially just teaching Dune how to build communism. Anyway, I'm done with it. Back to Lilian. And I think I've basically touched on everything I can about her. She's just a fun character.
I'm still not over One Piece.
What
I am so sorry.
Brooke?
Doesn't even try to do a follow-up. I'm just fucking done with One Piece.
Sorry, are there any follow-up questions anyone has? No? Okay, Brooke. I joke. Your world building is very creative, Gabe.
Thank you. I'm sorry it has to involve this story you hate.
Fucking One Piece.
When we all start doing our own independent PowerPoints, Alex is just gonna pull up a giant one saying why I hate One Piece.
It would be one slide. It would be one single slide.
Because it's
and there would be one image on it.
I think I know what image it would be too.
I know what image yeah.
I think you both know what image I'm talking about. That would be it. I think that's more than enough reason to hate One Piece.
I don't know what the image is. What is it?
I will find it as you start telling us about your character.
Okay. All right. Okay. Twi'la, the main character of my other story, which I just referred to as my power story or my magic story. To be fair, I don't even know if I'm sticking with the name Twi'la. I've thought about Trinity, but she's 5'8". She has brilliant red hair and freckles, and she's telekinetic. She was orphaned and misplaced into the country away from the other magical people. Raised up in a society where everyone serves in the military. I seem to like the military. Weird. And I love her because everyone gives her weird nicknames like Cinnamon or Ginger Snap or Ginger Cookie or Ginger Spice. They really like Ginger. I was going to have people call her Powder. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder. Anyway, so in the story, there's a island, I guess, that's called Ethblay, and this is where all like the magical people are because there used to be a bunch of gods and goddesses, and one of the goddesses named Theath. Oh my god, Theathlimas. Gifted humans with a bunch of abilities and like adaptations to help them survive. A shit ton of them still died off, so there's not like a lot of adaptations left. But the ones that did survive just moved to this island that's protected by barriers that's separated from the rest of the world. So it's kind of like a Bermuda Triangle situation where no one can get in that's not superpowered. But they do have some people leave the island occasionally to go to the mainland to just keep a tab on the regular people, see what's going on. And Twi'la's mother was one of them, and she gave birth to Twi'la and then fucking died. Twi'la was set to sea because the goddess still has abilities to bring the children home. But she washed up on shore. A mainland woman took her in. She was raised there. But she hears the song of her island and feels a constant pull out to the sea, and she doesn't understand why. But she lives her life fairly normally on the mainland. She does know quite early on that she has these telekinetic abilities, so she does play around with them. She keeps them decently secret. However, she's caught one day by someone in the army using them, and they go and tell their superior, and their superior tells their superiors, and the superiors tell their superiors, and then she's forced into the army because she has this ability, and they're like, fucking advantage. She's ours now. And I honestly came up with her because I had this one scene where I was like, I don't understand abilities and how people are just like super powered right away. So I just wanted this one scene where one of her buddies is trying to like get her to lift a tank, and she's like, I can't fucking lift a tank just as much as you can't walk into a gym and lift 300 pounds without training. And they're like, it's not the same thing. And she's like, it's the fucking same thing. I can't lift the goddamn tank. So I wanted that scene in it, and then I built the rest of the story around it.
No, that, yeah. See, spite.
Yeah.
Yes.
I literally just wanted her to struggle lifting things and everyone being mad at her because she's telekinetic. And she's like, it doesn't fucking work like that. I have to still train to lift heavy things. I can't lift a tank. She's also gay as fuck. And she will end up marrying a strong blonde woman. And I love her as well.
Right up.
Awesome.
This sounds amazing.
Hell yeah.
Yes. And then the second book will jump like, ha, funny. Oh, I just realized, I made like a mind lifter and then a physical lifter. Ha.
Yeah, kind of.
Power couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know how exactly it's going to work, but the second book will take place in the future with their granddaughter. And I was like, I have a gay couple and they're having a granddaughter. I'm going to have some godly blessing in this. But Amaris will take over the second book, and she's also telekinetic, and her best friend is a shadow and a wind shepherd.
That sounds amazing. I want to read this.
I do too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to start on this one, but I'm forcing myself to finish Zeyla's story first so I don't get caught up in the magical awesomeness.
Fair enough. I wish you luck. I could never do that.
I commend you. One story for trying to finish one story before moving on to another one. I've had like a couple ideas bounce around here and there about like just writing something outside of fantasy, but I'm committed to writing something. I'm committed to finishing the fantasy because I can't. If I don't finish it soon, I'm never gonna finish it. I know myself.
Mm-hmm. I still like work on this occasionally, or like I have ideas for it and jot them down, but I'm not like actively working on it the same way that I am with Zeyla, because it's just like I have to focus on Zeyla, otherwise I'll never fucking finish it, even though I really want to look at Twi'la's story. Twi'la or Trinity. Again, I don't really know. It's like Twi'la was my original name for her because I wanted her mom to find her at Twilight, so she's like, haha, I'll call you Twi'la. But then I was like, what if there's 3 children that were born in the mainland, and them coming back to Ethlay at the same time is what helps reconnect Ethlay to the rest of the world. So they're called the Trinity. So I'm not really sure. I'm still bouncing between the 2 names.
I like Twi'la, actually. That's very unique.
Yeah.
I like Trinity, but like I have a bias.
I think I also put a Trinity into my Zeyla story, so I probably shouldn't use it if I'm going to have Trinity in Zeyla. But I mean, Marie-Lou also used Daniel in 2 of her biggest series ever.
Before we started recording, it occurred to me to be like, how many of your guys' characters have like the same name?
Oh, it's unreal.
None of them.
Absolutely none.
None of them?
None other than Trinity.
All of my characters have their own unique name for now.
I have some characters in the same story who have the same name.
It's pretty realistic though.
Yeah.
Realistic.
Yeah.
I'm looking for my document and I cannot find it. Where is it? Here
On
it
a note
is.
of names. The Adder doesn't have a name. He's called the Adder. He fakes names a lot, but I wasn't going to give him a real name because he doesn't deserve one. He's an adder.
Oh yeah, as if he isn't suffering enough, Tyler.
I'm like, I have ones that I tend to come back to a lot. I have a lot of variations of Alex, which is not surprising.
I think I have an Arthur in every single story that I've like written in the last couple of years.
Oh my God. And then the one that I tend to use a lot. I tend to use Gabriel a lot, actually. That one comes up a lot. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And Madeline or Madison or Madeline, one of those 3. I have so many characters with that name.
It's not like characters, but in a lot of, or it's not specifically names, but in a lot of my stories, like it just ends up being a lot of women. Eventually, some men, but like what my like Porter, like Xeno as it is right now is just predominantly women. There's maybe like 1 man and 2 others that 2 other like very minor roles for those 2 men, but like at the same time it's just mostly women.
Who needs dudes?
Nodding my head.
You see this? At least they're all spelt differently.
Oh yeah, I don't even do that. In Glass Inferno, I have 2 characters who are just called Arthur.
Amazing.
I mean, they're not just called Arthur, but their first names are both Arthur. In my defense, they're like 1,000 years apart from each other, but still.
Yeah, there can be multiple Arthurs in different timelines.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we should go back to the focus.
Yes.
Brooke, anyone have questions for Brooke? Brooke, anything else you want to share?
I love telekinesis. Okay. So, like, how fine control telekinesis are we talking?
Yes, right. I did mention that a little bit. She can't control organic material.
Okay, good limit.
So I had that like in my head. I was like, I don't want her to be super powerful. So I had an idea where there's a point where someone's falling and someone's like, you need to fucking grab them before they fall to their death. She's like, I can't pick them up. They're a person. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? She's like, I can maybe grab their clothes. So she lifts them up by their clothes, but she can't control organic matter. Yeah, like she's basically just helpful in moving tanks.
A good skill to have. But then my question arises, what about smaller things like air? Can she, say, grab a scoop of air underneath somebody and hold that?
Because there's separate people who are called wind shepherds that harness the air molecules.
That's a cool name.
There we
That's
go.
a good name, yeah.
Just wondering, because telekinesis is one of my favorite powers, and it's got a lot of applications, especially if you get into the fine ways of being able to control moleculars.
Yeah. They're the smallest faction on the island. I have a bunch of other factions, but hers is the smallest, and that's why it's like a big deal when she comes back to the island, because I'm like, oh my god, your bloodline can continue. That's great.
Now that I'm thinking about this, Gabe, do you want to host a factions episode sometime?
Yes!
Okay.
Oh.
It's like, just, I was thinking about this. I'm like, fuck, my god.
I don't know if I can host. I don't know if I have the brain qualities to host.
Hey.
I can't do a PowerPoint. I can't keep doing PowerPoints.
Gabe, believe in your abilities. You have the brain power to host.
This is not a matter of like I can't physically keep doing PowerPoints. This is a restrictor that I'm putting on myself. I cannot keep doing PowerPoints. I have to stop.
I'm a creative. I can do so much more.
Yes, Brooke, your character sounds amazing. This world also sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to read both of your stories now.
I do. Yeah, send a draft.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm working on them. Honestly, I put more thought into the fucking book covers than I do the actual stories.
Holy shit, me.
The whole reason I made her fucking redheaded was because I had like an idea for like sprawling greenery. I also want like the world to be sort of 1940s-ish on the mainland, but like bioluminescent hella forest on the island, which then transitions over to the mainland in the second book with the granddaughter. So it's like a mix of kind of steampunk militia and bioluminescent fantasy.
I'm making a plea to any artists out there who are listening to this. Please commission everything she just fucking said. I want all of that visualized. I want everything we've been talking about visualized.
Yeah. The Pinterest boards I have for my stories are just ridiculous, and it makes me crave being an artist so much better. Like, I just want to create what I see in my head because it's so fucking pretty.
The only way to get there is to start.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
But it's hard.
It's
very hard.
Do it anyway.
But that's hard. The mentality is to his thing. It may be hard, but you got to keep trying.
But it's difficult.
Gabe,
it's worth trying.
Es difícil.
Anyway, I think we can move on to our final favorite OC, Tyler.
I'm your final favorite OC? Thank you.
We're all just figments of Alys's imagination.
Oh no.
Oh my god. Wait, which planet am I on? Millennia or Tariana?
I have more planets than that.
Oh no!
I actually do have a character named
Please not
Tyler.
Edmonton. Please not Edmonton.
No.
Please not Edmonton.
No,
Just so
stop.
you know. And
No.
my original concept for him is he's a demigod of the plague god.
Oh no.
Oh wow!
The plague god.
Yeah,
I don't have COVID, I swear.
Tyler, why don't you tell us about your character?
Right. This one is a large departure from what we've all been discussing. I had trouble picking a second character. My writing history, though long, is lost, and a lot of it is not finished enough to even bother mentioning or speaking about. I thought about doing D&D characters. There's some honorable mentions there. But I decided, since I am music boy, to do one of my characters in a song. This is a complete departure from what most people know me for. I'm going to post with this, and it is the lyrics of the song, because it's not that long, as well as the backtrack, a link to it. So it's going to go up there for anyone who wants to listen, read, or view.
I'll flash
The
it up
song
on
is
the screen
called-
too for YouTube.
Yeah.
If you're on Spotify, I'm sorry.
You can also play the music. That's perfectly fine. I made it
Got
my
it.
damn.
Okay, thank you.
Because I don't half-ass this shit. So the song is called Sincerely December. The song is from the perspective of the character December writing a letter to his sister November. All of the characters are named after the months. And so there are 12 characters in total. And I do reference each of them, as well as their relationships with the other characters, in short form and passing. There was a larger story that goes on with this, but the main story is December is writing to November because he has just cheated on his longtime girlfriend September with the new girl April. And though things have been cooling off with September for a while and they have not been the best, he feels completely and utterly guilty except when he is with April and is being a bit torn apart by it. And he's very flip-flopping between what he should and shouldn't do in this scenario. He's an asshole, and he does fully admit that, the last line being signing off Sincerely December, a liar and a cheat. That's the way the song fully ends, is him writing off to his sister, admitting fully that he knows he's in the wrong. I like this song because as someone who's been on both sides of this equation, I know this equation quite well and know how it feels. And so I poured a lot of various sides of myself into it. I love the relationships with the other characters in this. And the whole of the story it's a short story that I want to write on top of the song, just because of how connected. And of all the works that I have, this is actually probably one of my earliest. I wrote this when I was like 14, 15, I think. And it's gone through changes, obviously, but the core story has stayed the same. And I only recently finally sat down and was like, I need to put music to this because it's a very pretty song. Pulled out the equipment, made that pretty piano tune that you might be hearing right now. I don't know. Dean might not like it, so he might not include it, so we'll see.
I'm gonna include it, Tyler.
December is a bit of a dick. He's confused, he's lost, and he's not sure what to do. And so he's asking his older sister, who's away in the military, for advice. She's supposed to be home soon, but then again, September's also supposed to be home soon because she's out on a retreat. And the end of the story ends with a knock on his door. And I haven't decided whether I leave it up in the air, whether it's September or November, or have it be September coming in knowing what he's done, or having it be November coming in and telling him to stop being a fucking dumbass. Haven't decided yet. Yeah. Short and sweet, Sincerely December. Hence the name change.
Finger snapping. Very creative.
Wow. That's really cool.
I've tried writing story songs many times in the past. This is the only one that's worked out. And that's because I don't stick to a hard narrative structure. Like, it's pretty loose each of the lines just references what one or more of the characters is doing in relation to this, because it's also supposed to be December giving his sister an update on what their friend group of the 12 friends are doing, because again, she's away in the military right now. So like kind of an epistolary narrative song all mixed into one.
Yeah, no, that's a really unique way of telling a story.
Yeah, Channel is very like strong ballad energy. Very ballad like. Because especially if it's like a soft piano too, then it's telling a story.
Tried. We'll see if my voice can actually do it justice when I try to actually sit down and record. Which, who fucking knows, man? Getting in front of the microphone to record is annoying as hell.
That's so fun though. I love really complicated characters where you're like, yeah, they kind of suck, but I like them anyway.
Oh, most of my characters kind of fucking suck. I don't know if anyone's noticed.
Most of mine don't, but my characters who do suck, I tend to really like. Vampira.
I try not to make any like if my characters suck, it's because they. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Never mind.
I
have very good characters.
My power fantasy is having my characters eat shit and die. So I don't know.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's wrong with me there. God complex? Sorry, I'm not meant to step on any toes.
God complex? Sorry, God complex?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was unrelated.
It's December.
I don't think I have any questions. Does anyone else have any questions?
Nope.
Gab?
No, I don't. No, got no questions.
What, no one wants to ask what he got when he was his birthday at 7?
You're saying you don't have every birthday planned for this character?
Guess what? They're all in the months that they're named after.
It's shocking.
I wonder why, eh?
Honestly, I think month names are really cool.
God, it's easy to rhyme. It's so easy. November, September, December, October. Oh my God. It just writes itself.
Yeah.
It's basically reading.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all of our favorite OCs for this episode then. Do we want to go through some quick honorable mentions?
I've got plenty.
I've got a few, yeah.
Cool. Well, to start my honorable mentions, wow, I can speak. My honorable mentions, I have from Mars's story, I have the other two that make up his trio, which are Tempo and Athena. I love both of them dearly with all of my heart. With Alys, I have her twin sister Eve, because they're very intertwined and very hard to separate as characters, and I love both of them. And also shout out to Adahe, who's like my main character, just like in general, and I never talk about her, but she's also great. Dean.
Just on Adahe, I should probably notice the one part, or I will never forget where I was revealed a huge spoiler so casually.
I didn't realize it was a spoiler. I didn't think I had kept it a secret.
I had no goddamn idea up until that point, dude.
That just blows my mind. I can't believe I hadn't mentioned it before that.
Yeah, but anyway, from Xeno, honorable mentions are Senate and soon Naya. From D&D, both my character for Marie-Soleil's Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign, Orla, and for an upcoming D&D campaign that, you know, may or may not be InkGuild affiliated, is a character, Miyu Fei, that is, they're both neutral good and still very interesting in contrast, and I'm really excited to start exploring that. I also have...
Was that a spoiler?
That was a spoiler.
A little bit.
It's a spoiler, then it's a spoiler for me too. Because guess who's told me he's writing his backstory and finishing it up like 3 nights in a row and still hasn't sent me anything?
Oh, I'm sorry.
To be fair, I still haven't sent you my updated backstory yet either.
I haven't. I'm so
Here's
sorry.
The thing. You haven't promised me, Alex. Fucking Dean has multiple times said, "Oh yeah, I'm working on it. Be done soon.
I'm sorry.
I am
You liar.
teased.
Okay.
I'll make my promise now. I'll have it to you on the weekend sometime.
I'll have it to you.
How vague.
I'll have it to you soon. I swear. I promise you. I swear.
How vague.
Okay. Just okay. By the end of Sunday, at the absolute latest.
Which Sunday?
This Sunday.
I don't think you own Sundays. But anyways, I digress. My threats are empty, and I don't mean to rush or pressure anyone. Take your time.
Mm-hmm.
Especially you, Brooke. Take your time.
Join us.
Submit to the peer pressure.
Don't tell me.
Sorry, Dean, you were saying?
Just to sing. One final thing. It is for. I submitted a few, like a rough outline to a creative competition a while ago, and I haven't heard anything back, so I don't think I made it. But just I really enjoyed the characters that I made for that competition, and hopefully if it's not with that if it's not with those creative people, then I get to bring those characters to life somehow. So those are my people.
Gabe.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I had a couple faction leaders who I like wanted to talk about. So I'll just go through them very, very quickly. So there is I previously mentioned him a little bit, Commissar Stanislav Valentine, who leads the faction Radio Moscow. There is a character named Arcade, who leads a group of people called the Tarhounds. There's a character named Lady Liberty, who leads a cult, I guess you'd call it, called the Dead Presidents. There's a guy named Sheriff McCready, who runs a group called the Horsebackers, who I was very much also considering talking about because they're also very funny. As far as other characters, I mean, there were more like serious characters. There's Fever, who is essentially the actual, like, not the actual protagonist, but the more serious deuteragonist of the story and Dune's main love interest. And there was a character called Ludens, who I really wanted to talk about, but I couldn't really because he essentially he's the guy who leads the military group that steals Dune's porn at the very start, and I want to talk about him because he's very interesting, but I ultimately couldn't because the whole mystery of what his deal is sort of like a driving force of the plot. I felt like that would be like getting into that would be too big of a spoiler.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's it. Those are my honorable mentions.
Brooke?
Well, Zeyla Irakoze, I would honestly write a novella just on her. I think I might. Estelle is a character from a different novel that I really love, but haven't developed too much of her yet. But I will in the future when I finish writing my other fucking books. And Eloise, who y'all see soon in class. But I feel like she could also be like a small novella character. And I think she's interesting enough.
And soon in the Discord, because Tyler and I are not in university, so please don't forget about us too.
Hey, don't forget about us old asses.
Yeah, y'all fucking ancient cryptids, get the fuck out of here. You crusty, dusty, ancient, dusty ass, musty bitches.
Always like, oh, don't forget about us.
So, like,
you graduated.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Marie-Soleil is sitting here beside me and heard all of that, and she's the oldest among us, and she's crying, Brooke. Like, probably more than that one character of yours that cries every chapter. She's crying.
Marie-Soleil is a preciously youthful soul. She doesn't count.
You just call her useful as a compliment?
I said youthful.
Youthful. Oh my God.
Full. If you beg hard enough, I'll share it with you.
So, December, to wrap us up, well, who are your honorable mentions?
I'm not this. Actually, he is partially a self-insert, so I guess. I think of myself more as a September child, but anyways, honorable mentions. Your first is always your favorite, and my first D&D character, Amelia. I resurrect her time and time again. I've played her many times. I've brought her in as an NPC many times. In fact, in Ink and Mirrors, if some of y'all fuck up enough, you might get to meet her. A variant of her, at the very least, or I won't spoil anything more. The crew of the Oresteia for my Mythic Cosmos. I love Elle, our protagonist there, but I didn't want to talk about her since we already heard her say the word dildo in our critique episode, so she's had her fill of spotlight for now. Couple characters from the Venomist. Some of the other lineages of Venomist are very interesting. The other's very boring in comparison to what some of the others can do, like the lineage of Toxin, or since you mentioned my name, Alex, the lineage of Plague, which uses the plague as opposed to any other poisons because they're fucking batshit.
Amazing.
Nice.
And then one of the moons of Saturn is the planned protagonist for one of my other Mythic Cosmos pieces. That's going to be quite a longer one when I finally get to, because I haven't used a god character yet in the Mythic Cosmos, and their stories are very interesting, but I want to get my boots on in the setting before I tackle something that large. Not sure which moon yet, debating Ganymede. Also might have Titan move from Jupiter to Saturn because he hates his dad, and we'll see if it's Titan instead. But I digress. Those are my honorables.
Well, I think we can safely wrap up for tonight. So, thank you everybody so much for listening. We are at the InkGuild on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, but our main home is on YouTube and Spotify. You can also connect with us individually through our own social media. I believe that will be in the description if you're on YouTube. I don't know where stuff goes on Spotify. You can also check out our Wix if you want to learn more about us and keep an eye out for more podcasts and other creative projects. Yeah. I feel like our honorable mentions is a good way to close out the episode. So, thanks again for listening, and have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.